right, well, our project for today is to put that thing there into this thing here. We're gonna put the 396 in the 68 El Camino, hook it up to the 400 transmission that we just put the shift kit in, get it all dropped in, bolted in, and I don't know if we'll hear it run today, probably not, but we're gonna hear it run pretty soon. Super excited, this thing's gonna be on the road really quick. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so I got a little carried away and I forgot to take a little bit of video here, but what I got going right now is I went ahead and primed the engine, ran it up, got oil pressure up to the top end and everything. And what I do for that is this is a regular distributor. This is actually the original one, it's a points type. But on it, the way these work is they're driven by the camshaft. So the camshaft runs on these gears right here and spins it, makes it go around, makes all the spark, hit all the different cylinders. So what you do, and it also on the other end of it, as the camshaft is churning, it churns a little slot in there that churns the oil pump, and that's what pumps the oil up to the rest of the engine. So what I do for that is I've taken an old distributor, taken the gear off of the bottom, cut the top off of it, and this goes right in there when the distributor's out. This goes right in there, and that little tang right there will go inside the slot for the oil pump. And then what you do, you have to have this on there because the oil runs through the sides here. And then you put that in there and you run a drill on the other end of it, and then you just crank away at it and spin the motor over by hand a few times. And what that does is it primes the motor, gets oil everywhere, and all that oil is going to end up running down before I actually start it, but at least it gets up there to begin with, and it'll get some of the air out of some of the oil passages that are inside of the block. So that way we'll have a little bit anything you can do to get a little bit more oil up, or just to be extra cautious when you're starting a brand new engine can pay dividends, because there's nothing worse than having an engine with very, very few miles on it and having to pull it back apart again. Ask me how I know. So anyways, that's what I've done. The distributor I put in here, this is an HEI out of a later model. It's not the original points type distributor. I've used these things for years, man, and they are so simple to deal with. You just one wire you plug in, and that's it. To the 12 volts just to run it. You run it to a keyed 12 volt. Goes to that. Runs simple. If you want to run a tack, there's a plug in there. You just put a little connector up there and you could run a tack off of it. These things are great. And then I went ahead and put the starter on, got that all bolted in, and I'm just kind of double checking a bunch of stuff. Those few things you could put on before you actually put the engine in, make it just a little bit easier for you, especially the starter, because if the engine's out, why crawl underneath there to put it on when you could do it right here? Sometimes you can't, but I'm pretty sure I can on this one. So anyways, that's about it for right there. I'm going to go ahead and get the engine hoist out and get this all bolted up to the transmission, and then we'll go ahead and stab it in the car. That's enough. All right, puppies. All right, puppies. Okay, guys, go on. Go play. Go on. That's enough. Go on. Go play. Go on. Go on. Go puppies. All right. We're going to get this going here. I'm going to put the flex plate on. My puppies needed a little bit of time for a little back scratching, I guess. I believe that they think it's time to EAT, but it is NOT. So they got to lay around for a little bit longer. They're trying to trick me into thinking it's later than it actually is. So, all right, well, we're going to do the flex plate first. We'll get that on there. This is a new flex plate. It's got the holes are not evenly spaced on a flex plate. On the Chevys anyways, they go on one way. And so what you got to do, there's like a little indexing thing back here on the back of the crank. You can't really see it. But anyways, you line that up and you're good to go. Then what we're going to do is put Loctite again, blue Loctite, on the threads. So that way we don't have an issue with it backing out. It would be a real bummer to have a flex plate bolt come loose because there is no way to do anything about that. I don't know, I guess maybe you could squeeze a wrench in there, but you're not going to be able to torque it back down and correct the issue if one loosens up while the transmission's in the car. So this is just one of those times where, you know, rushing through it would definitely not be the thing to do. And because that would be a bummer to pull it out. I had a car one time, my first car, my very first hot rod. I was 16, 17, whatever. Went through 11 transmissions in it, one after the other. What a pain in the butt. And it was all started by my inexperience, you know. And but like I said before, that is precisely how I learn. That's how I've always learned, is by making mistakes and trial and error and all those different kind of things have always been my deal. So something to be said for busting your knuckles on stuff. These are torqued down to 60 pounds. You want to do even increments, and there's six bolts on here. So what you want to do, you want to crisscross. You have 6 bolts. You're going to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You just kind of rotate around, but going across from one another. It's the same way that you'd put on a tire on a car. It's the same thing. You don't want to crank one down and then go to the other one, because that's how you bend rims and whatnot. So let me get down here. 60 pounds. This is the click. There's the click. 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 Alrighty, so that's going to do it for that one. Now we can get the transmission on. Alright, so we got a brand new torque converter here. My new transmission, my new flex plate. What you want to do, you always got to put in transmission fluid in the torque converter before you put the torque converter in there. You don't want to start it up, because this, you know, the torque converters, it runs fluid through there, through the pump and everything. You don't want to start it up dry. I mean, when they assemble them, they're lubed in there, but you want to put some in there when you start it, for when you start it up. The other thing you want to do with these is you want to take a little bit of the fluid, get it around the seal, and the seal in the transmission as well. Just get everything coated. That way, again, you don't start it up dry. It's not a good way to do it. So then when these go in, they have to be seated all the way in. There, 3 clicks all the way in. I don't know if you can see it, but it should be in, not out here with the rest of it. Not out with the edge of it here. It needs to be in. But you go back and forth. This one actually just dropped right in, but you want to go back and forth. This is a stock converter, so you shouldn't be able to hit your hand back there behind the converter and the bell housing. So that's in. Now I'm just going to muscle it up onto the back of the motor here. This here is how I went through my first of those 11 transmissions when I was a kid. I didn't have the converter all the way in, and then I bolted it all together. It left a small gap in between the bell housing and the motor, and I just cranked it down with a bolt and broke the pump, and that was first transmission, and it was downhill from there. This thing's got 3 holes in it. I just moved it forward so I can get the motor to come up a little bit, so that way I can get it all together. This is where a little bit of help comes in real handy, but whatever, I've done a lot of this by myself. And I can go inside. My kids or wife are always willing to come help me, but sometimes it's easier to just roll with it as you got it going, you know, so. And I'm not going to crank any of these bolts down. I'm just talking about how I messed up that transmission a long time ago by having bolts in there, and cranking it down. So what I'm doing right now is I'm just trying to get it lined up, and then I'll get it to pop together. And then once it does that, then there. You can see it all going together right there. We'll reset the holder up here and get it ready to go in. Down a little bit. All right, so got the engine all in. It's a whole bunch of getting up and down underneath and on top and back and forth, so I'll probably cut a lot of that out because there's a whole lot of me going back and forth and it's not very entertaining. Anyways, engine's in, it's bolted in, got the transmission all done. We did that out here. Ready to go. My next step is going to be, I got to figure out where the wires go. I got a few of them. Not a big deal. I mean, these cars are simple. I'll figure that out. I need to get spark plug wires, carburetor gasket, hoses and stuff. I need to do an inventory of what I have. The car came with some parts in boxes, and I also have a lot of parts in my storage too. So between the two, probably what I'll do, because I like to, when I'm going to do a portion of the car, I like to get all the parts that I have out, look through what I got, make sure I can use what I have as efficiently as possible, and then I try to get my tools together. I clean up after every single thing that I do. Otherwise, man, I'd have such a huge mess out here. So that's it. So I have to regroup and then come back, and I can start bolting all of these things back together on here. I also have to modify the heat riser on the exhaust. It's got a little flapper in there. I'm going to take that flapper out, tap the ends, and plug it so it will just flow right through. And that's about it. Hoses and stuff, but like I said, I got a lot of that in boxes, and then I have even more of that in my storage. So I'll scrape all that together, and that'll be another video right there. But this is it. Got the motor together. It is dropped in the car, bolted in there permanently. hopefully, well, I say permanently, as long as it, well, I don't want to say permanent, but anyways, it's in there and it's going to be ready to get fired up pretty soon, hopefully by the next video or two. So anyways, thanks a lot for watching. I appreciate it. Give me a comment, give me a like, subscribe please, and tell your friends. And I'll see you next time.